Hi guys, meteorologist Lindsey Slater here. So we're going to check out some space weather conditions. There's been some very interesting stuff going on with the sun as of recently. We've had some flares, which is why we have R1, which is basically a minor radio blackout. We also have had a G1, which is associated with a CME, which again, if you're kind of new to this channel, there are three different things you can get when it comes to space weather. You can get R scale impacts, S scale, and G scale. R scales are when you have solar flares. So you get these basically like radio blackouts. HF radio communications are impacted when you have a flare. A flare is the light that flares from the sun. It is immediate. The impacts are immediate on Earth. Now, a flare can be associated with a coronal mass ejection, which is plasma coming out of the sun. That is when there's actual stuff that is going towards Earth or in any direction. That's when you get geomagnetic storm impacts. When this is when you have power grid issues, you could have satellite operation problems as well. And then you have events where it also puts out solar energetic particles with the flares, with the CMEs. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. This is when you can get protons that come out of the sun along with these other factors. This is particularly dangerous for astronauts. If you're in a spaceship, if you're launching something, it's impactful to satellites as well. So those are the three things that we look for. So recently we obviously had a flare because we had an R1, and we recently had a CME, which is why we had a G1, but no S's. And if you scroll down on SWPC's website, you can look at some of these things. You can look at the sun. This is the 195 angstrom or 193, as you like to look. It's like the gold sun. This kind of gives you a blanket view of the sun. It's not my favorite one. I like looking at 131 is specifically for flaring. 171, you can really see what's going on behind even some filaments, and 284, that's very, very bright, but it kind of shows you easily where there's active regions. 304, this is good for darkening regions of the sun after launches. 94, I don't really use 94 too much. But yeah, these are all meant for different things we can look at. If we scroll down, we can see that that flare right there, it was likely, I'm trying to get the thingy out of here. Likely we had, I believe that was an M-class flare that happened right around the 12th at 1356 UTC. So this was happening at like 7 a.m. So we had a flare at about 7 a.m. Another little C-class flare happened around 9 a.m. On basically this morning. It's today the 12th? Yes, it is. Just making sure I got the right day. But this was not associated with any protons. So no solar energetic particle events were associated with this. So this is also a look at the coronagraph. We can actually watch in a really cool way right there. There was a huge CME launched on the behind the sun, and then there was a few more behind the sun. So we're looking basically down at the sun, and you can actually see these regions, one lift off right here, and then one following it right there. You can kind of see right there. So this kind of just shows us where we're seeing activity and then how we can actually model it looking at Enlil, which is the solar wind prediction. So I'm going to put it forward in motion, and you'll be able to see, okay, now is this Earth directed? This is how we find out right there. Those two little blasts. This is a more of what I like to call a glancing blow. Earth is the little green dot. So this is a glancing blow. Anything else that we see here, that right there, that's solar wind. So we're seeing some solar wind, some high speed streams coming out of coronal holes. So coronal holes can cause solar wind to reach Earth and give us some nice substorming. Absolutely. You can get G1 and G2 level storming out of just coronal holes, which if you're not familiar, I'll pull up the Helio viewer so you guys can see. One of my favorite websites is this one. Coronal holes, we're going to look at the 211 angstrom, and you can see we have a pretty beautiful coronal hole right here. This is the one earlier last week that looked like the shape of Italy. Then there's also another coronal hole just now getting onto the eastern limb of the sun. It's going to rotate into Earth view, likely transequatorial if these two can come together. We have some active regions here. These are some of the bigger ones. We want to look at 131 to see flaring regions, and you can actually go backward in time and kind of watch where these regions were flaring. These have been particularly active, basically in the southern hemisphere, but center disk as well, as they kind of rotated into center disk, which is likely why we had on the 9th right here. This is when we had the CMEs from these clusters. So yes, Enlil is a good way to figure out if something's Earth directed and if we have to let people know, especially those who are in like emergency management, those who deal with flights, polar flights. That's when you want to really look at that. So if you go to SWPC's website and look at the emergency management section, you can actually see those absorption regions where we may or may not have radio blackouts. So from those other flares right there, there was that R1 blackout right there over the southern part of Africa. And that was kind of it with that flare. And you can see it right here. There's the flare associated also with that blackout. And you can also look at Enlil to see some of that activity. So we look at all these different aspects of the sun. These are all the different ones we have at our arsenal. This right here is the 131, which is great for flaring regions. So I will put this forward in motion. See how this is like dancing, almost like it's sparkling. So we're watching those active regions. Oh, that was a nice little, I believe that was a filament launch there. Right there. You're going to see it. Oh, wait, I got to go backwards. Right there. Very cool. Now, this is not normally the one I would use to show this. I'm going to show probably the 191. I believe that's the 191. Oh, I'm sorry, 304. I'll use the 304 to show that. But right there was something that happened. What I want you to keep an eye on is right over here. This is actually going to be a spot. I'm just going to move myself over a little bit. This is a spot where you're going to notice a big old flare. Right. It's coming. Hold tight. There. See that thing? Holy cow. Boom. On the far side of the sun. It's wrapping like around this way. It's wrapping around the eastern limb. So it's like right here on the far side and it's wrapping around. So that thing launched a pretty nice looking flare. So that's what we look at when it comes to flaring regions. So that one I believe is right here. Now we can look at, this is the 193. This kind of gives us an overall aspect on all of this stuff that's going on. I wanted to show you guys a movie of it. Remember, watch down here. We had that weird little launch earlier, which it'll pop up right there. So we're seeing stuff getting ejected. I wonder if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Hang on. Let's see if I can zoom in. Nope, it will not let me zoom in. Okay, so I have it full screen now. But yeah, lots of things were ejected from this, and that leads to darkening regions. Very active pattern right here, that flare right there. So very, very active right now, sun. We have these active regions. We have this coronal hole as well. And now we can look at the 211, which is just going to show us that big old weird coronal hole where it sits right now. It's now rotating out of Earth-centered disk or sun-centered disk. So it's not pointed at Earth anymore. It's kind of like over here now. So we'll see what happens when it kind of works its way back around. It'll evolve and change shape as we go through time. And then we also have, this is the sun that we look at for launches. So you can look around and see where we could have potential launches of stuff. So you see down here, it looks like a little fire. So there's little filaments there happening. We have prominences coming off the sun. Where's that spot where we had all that plasma ejected? I believe it was right there. Yep, right down here. So this region here, we're seeing some plasma being lifted up from the sun and ejected outwards. So that I believe was associated with our CME that we had earlier this week. And then we got to keep an eye over here because we know this is a very active spot with things launching out. Very, very cool. Wow. Did you guys see that? Hang on. Let me go back. Right here. Look up here. Ready? I'm going to go backwards. See that launch? Very, very cool to see that launch happen. Love showcasing this stuff for you guys. So as of right now, we have a couple of little active regions on the sun. I do want to show the solar synoptic map to look at the probabilities from people from SWPC. So right now we have a 90% probability of C class, 25 M class, and just 1% of a proton event and an X class. So we have that funky looking negative polarity coronal hole right here. We also do have these active regions 43, 36. And then we really got to watch out here. Out here, there's some really interesting things happening. So I would say this week we have to keep an eye on 43, 40 for any other additions to if we get any more flaring going on, any other CMEs that are launched. But for now, things are active, but nothing's launching in our direction as of right now. So I will update you guys as we see fit. But that is your space weather update for today. I will see you guys next week.